All right, hi everyone. Welcome to episode number 5 of HSMAI Minnesota Live. I'm Stephen Dickey, the chapter president of HSMAI Minnesota, and we're sitting down today with Dan from NOR1. So it should be a great conversation about guest engagement today on HSMAI Minnesota Live. Before we get to Dan, I can advance my screen. I wanted to share a couple updates here. So today so our webinar series is continuing. Today we're talking with Dan DeHerrera from NOR1, and then we have lined up next time is an Expedia update from our own Kelly Van Dam market manager. Our local market manager is going to be giving an update from the OTA side. So we have that registration already up on the website. So go to hsmaiminnesota.com and register for that one. That one's going to be again on November 18th. Some other updates. Again, we're still looking for volunteers. We can never have too much help here at our chapter. We're starting the 2021 planning. It's going to be hopefully an exciting year. We had a great plan set for this year that we know that got kind of thrown away a little bit thanks to coronavirus. But we're going to be getting together for a planning session in the next month or so to start planning 21. We hope to have the normal meetings as much as we can, and continue engaging our members as much as we can. So if you have an interest in volunteering with us, if you work with a venue that wants to host HSMAI Minnesota for an in-person event, or if you're a partner that wants to get engaged with us on how to reach our membership, please work with us and contact me or one of the board members, and we will talk to you more about that. So just a quick update there, but now I'll turn it over to Dan. Dan works with NOR1, and he is someone I've met through my work. We've developed a good professional relationship. He's a great person to talk to about upselling. He's always got great ideas for driving revenue opportunities through guest engagement. So I'm excited to introduce Dan. I'm sure it's going to be a great conversation, and we'll go from there. So Dan, I'll make you a host, and I'll let you kick it off.
Perfect. Thanks, Stephen. Appreciate that very warm introduction. So I appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here in a little bit. And while I'm waiting for that, just want to say thank you guys for having me back. I think if you have been in the chapter for a while, you may remember me from last year. I had a nice presentation down at Topgolf. I think that one was. That was really fun.
Yeah.
And Stephen was nice enough to welcome me back. So apparently I wasn't that bad, right? And again, thank you guys for joining yet another Zoom meeting. I know a lot of us are kind of like ready to do this in person. I wish I was in person with everybody. So it's always easier to tell when people are falling asleep too. So in person. I'll try to make this a little bit more fun. Today, we're going to talk about recovery tactics for hoteliers and finding revenue opportunities through guest engagement. So we'll go through the presentation, and then we'll have some Q&A at the end, some conversation back and forth. So if you have questions or anything, definitely hold on to those. And when we talk about revenue opportunities through guest engagement, what does that mean? We're going to go through talking about why is guest engagement very important right now? What does it look like? What does actually engaging a guest mean? What does that look like? And we'll do some fun interactions together. And then, of course, how to do it the right way, and like how can your hotels, or how can you take this back to the hotel or your property and say this is something that we can incorporate? Because it's very, very important to know just that, with less guests that we're seeing lower occupancies, each guest interaction is really important. So just a little bit about me. Stephen was nice enough to give me a good introduction. I'm Director of Sales for Americas at NOR1. I oversee the US and Canada. I've had over 20 years of hospitality experience through various brands. I obviously started when I was 10 years old, so but no, I've been in the industry for a while, from front desk all the way through direct sales, and then been at NOR1 for the last 2 years. Nor1 is if you're not familiar, we are the hospitality industry's #1 provider for upsell technology. Everything we do is done with intelligence and data. Most importantly, we have 3 upsell solutions that properties can use throughout the guest journey, we like to say, from booking a reservation all the way through check-in, check-out. And that's the way that we intercede for hotels to really engage the guests and get the additional revenue. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So first and foremost, why engagement? Why now? I talk to a lot of hotels on a daily basis. A lot of times we have discussions about engagement, upselling, things like that. Most properties say, look, occupancy's down, revenue's down, I don't have the staff. This is something that I should probably put off. Well, today we're going to talk about why that's not the case. And there is some good news coming out of travel right now. These are some really positive articles. I know we see negative stuff all the time, but I found some really positive stuff from this week that points us all in the right direction that travel is indeed coming back. We saw that Caesars is actually going to start having live entertainment again. So yay, we can all get to Vegas. I think one of the biggest things too is that the FDA finally approved a treatment for COVID. So as we start to see, these improvements and these medicines coming out too, that's going to really just make travel, guests are going to have less fear of traveling, and they're going to be a little bit more confident about it. And then of course, China saw a huge week of travel during what they call the Golden Week. And as we've seen through the pandemic, starting off with China, that really gives us an idea of what's to come this way through the US and kind of spread that way. So to see a recovery in China is actually very, very positive. And not only is traveling is coming, but it's actually happening right now. So if you look on LinkedIn a lot, you've probably seen this story. On October 18th, TSA finally saw the first time that they crossed 1 million passengers through the TSA checkpoints, which is great because we have not seen that since March. So that's really encouraging numbers that travel is happening right now. Here's some data that I pulled from a great website. If you're anytime you want to look at numbers and really look at data, there's a website called destinationanalyst.com, and they pulled a lot of different data on travel and trends and things like that. This graph right here is from a survey that they did last month throughout the summer. They surveyed 12,000 travelers in the US and got some interesting information, which we'll go through a little bit here. I think first and foremost, the best thing to notice is that it looks like over a third of the people that they surveyed took a trip, and they took a leisure trip. And staycation and taking a leisure trip, so with the family, things like that, was obviously the top travel platform of the summer, which I think we all kind of saw looking at hotels. The good news to see is that private homes and 3- and 4-star hotels garnished the highest confidence and safety. So where guests were staying was at either a private home, a friend or relative's house, or a 3- and 4-star hotel. So that tells us that the hotels have what they're doing as far as cleanliness and getting the word out is helping, and it is working. And I think another big point to showcase is almost 70% are actually researching coronavirus-related regulations for their stay. So having that information is key. So going to leisure travel. I saw this meme and I thought that was hilarious. This is exactly how I feel. The good news from this, again, is that, like I said, leisure travel is happening. Over half of Americans right now say they're ready to travel. And actually over 75% say they have travel plans coming. So that's good to hear. And that's good to know that, that portion is still strong, and it's going to be strong looking to the future. Also, we saw that a third of the guests took a trip this summer. So that's great. So out of those 12,000 people, a third said they actually did take a trip. And 80% said that they're willing to stay at homes or at friends' houses. So those are kind of the two things, family houses. But hotels, 3- and 4-star hotels being the highest level, which is great. And also there's just confidences right now that people can travel and do it safely. So that's good, all good signs to see. So that's on the leisure side. As we talk a little bit more about meetings, these are the regulations state by state. So all states, with the exception of California, for whatever reason, can have meetings. And this graph shows, as of a couple of days ago, where those meetings are likely to take place and what sort of capacities they have. So obviously for Minnesota, that's great. You guys could have 250 people per meeting as of right now, which is awesome. So that shows that you're obviously doing the right thing in your state. So that's really good to hear. Also, BizReport put out something recently about, and Steve and I were just talking about this, about meeting confidence and the appetite to go to an in-person meeting. Right now, they're saying 85% of people are willing to go to an in-person meeting and are excited to do so. So again, love to be there in person with you guys. But right now we're doing this virtually, and I think we're all kind of done with the Zoom, right? So want to see people and do it safely. So the good news is that meetings are going to start to happen very soon. The other part of that too is business travel. So from that same survey, looking at business travel, the question was pitched, do you anticipate your company increasing business travel soon? About a fourth said January was going to be where we'll start to see more business travel. What does that mean? Being in October, well, nothing in the immediate future, but that means we need to get ready and we need to start preparing our hotels for January, when we probably start to see an increase in business travel, with mostly people saying probably sometime after April. So again, this gives us the rest of this year and first quarter to kind of get ready for that surge that we feel like we're about to see. Now we want to come back and look at right now, right? So I pulled this STR reports for September, and let's see what they're saying. So if you're looking at the numbers right now, they look kind of doom and gloom, right? We could see that occupancy for the US was down 28.2%, so just hovering at about 48. ADR down as well, almost 25%. So overall RevPAR being down 46.1%. So that's kind of like the bad news portion. The good news that we're seeing at NOR1 is that guests are actually still willing to upgrade, even more so this year than they did last year. So if you're not familiar with NOR1, again, what we do is we help hotels get additional revenue through upselling. And one of the solutions that we have is one called eStandby, where guests can click on a link that we embed onto a confirmation page, a confirmation email, and guests can then have a list of potential upgrades and click through and request the ones that are most relevant to them. So with that data we pulled, we looked at September. Even though RevPAR was down, quite a bit, we saw an increase in click-throughs for upgrade requests. So you can see it increased from 15.6% to 16.7%, which is actually numbers-wise an overall increase in 7.4%. So that means guests are clicking through and looking at upgrades more. Of those requests, or of those click-throughs, we saw an increase of 17% requesting. So what that means is that 17% of the overall numbers, more than last year, are actually interested in upselling. Now, the other good news of that too is the cost of the price per night of the upsell is up also 7.3%. There's a lot of reasons for these increases, and one of the biggest ones being is that, and we'll talk more about this toward the end too, is that hotels have more room to upgrade. Now the occupancy is a little bit lower. Travel costs are down. So guests who maybe weren't affected work-wise by the coronavirus or anything going on in the industry, they have the same amount of revenue that they had last year to travel, but it's cheaper. So that means that they're going to have more of an appetite to upsell or upgrade. So this is why engaging the guests right now and not waiting is really important, so you can capitalize on some of this revenue. So that was the why now, right? So now let's talk about every guest interaction. Now we at NOR1, again, try to talk about interacting with the guest through the reservation cycle. So we'll talk a little bit more about that too. And the reason being why interaction with the guest is important is because guests spend differently during their travel. They spend typically during their trip more than they do prior to the trip. And you could probably relate to this if you've ever taken the family on a trip. You probably book your room, your flight, and you get the best possible rate for both. And then as you get closer, it's like, oh, yeah, let's add on a meal, let's add on an excursion, let's do something like that. So this graph right here shows what that guest journey, we like to say, looks like. So we're looking at from booking a reservation at a hotel, confirmation, pre-stay, check-in, property through checkout. And it's really important to have the interaction with the guest at each and every one of these points, because as I just showed you, spending is different at each and every one of these points. One of the key stats that we look at too is online booking. So obviously 83% of guests book their rooms online. So it's important to engage them at that booking portion, avoiding too much overload on choice. And then of course that pre-arrival portion we just talked about, where guests are getting excited. They're packing their bags, they're making arrangements for their pets, and they're getting excited about their trip. Now is a great time to engage them and look for potential upsell opportunities. The other portion about that too, and I'll just side note this for a little bit, is the guest satisfaction portion of upselling and of engaging the guests. So a few years back, if you've ever heard of Brand Karma, they're a company that sort of helps hotels build their reputation online. They did a study of over 11,000 online reviews and found that 25% higher guest satisfaction when guests were offered a relevant, targeted, personalized upgrade offer during their stay, as opposed to when they weren't. So this means that guests are having a better experience overall. They're posting about it online, they're taking pictures, and you can do this more now that occupancies are lower. So what does engagement look like? So I've said that word a few times. Maybe you're not quite sure what do you mean by guest engagement? Well, we're going to do a couple of exercises here together, and you can kind of follow along with me and see what you think. Now imagine you're at the hotel and you've got this family hanging out in your lobby at 10 o'clock in the morning, right? They look like they've had a really fun trip getting here. So what enhancements could your property give to take advantage of? What do you think would make this guest stay better that you're at the hotel, as opposed to just standing around waiting for them to check in? Perhaps your property has these types of enhancements that they could do. Well, just by looking at them, let's take a look at it together and see what they might like. I mentioned it's 10 o'clock in the morning. Do you think these guys probably want to get into their room early? Absolutely. Suite with the living room? Oh yeah, they probably want as much space as possible. Romantic dinner in the restaurant? Nah, probably not. If you have kids, you know what I'm talking about. That's not going to happen. Spa treatment, I think they'd like to have that, but probably not realistic. In-room movie, actually, these are coming back, and some of the properties are starting to do more with in-room entertainment. So we'll talk about that another time. Breakfast buffet, absolutely. Second bedroom, for sure. These are all enhancements that your property could probably offer to these guests that would really enhance their stay at your hotel. Now, the thing we gathered all this information just by looking at them. Unfortunately, there's still some things we don't know. We don't know if they're willing to pay for these, and also we don't know what price. So there's still some things we don't know, but we can gather some things just by talking to these guests and really engaging them. Now, here's a tougher one. In our second example, we'll call this girl Lily. And of Lily, we're looking at her, I don't really know much about her just by looking. Is she here on leisure? Is she here with her girlfriends? I don't really know. So if I look at my potential offers to her, I have no idea what to offer her, and I have no idea what to present. And if you start presenting things or doing offers that are kind of not personalized, she probably won't be very much engaged and probably won't really want to purchase anything. So it's really important that we learn as much as we can about Lily and find out ways to get her something personalized and really engage her that way. Now we've seen why we need to engage the guest, because there are revenue opportunities. Now, how do we do it though? How do we do it intelligently and do it in a way that the guest is willing to not only engage, but really take advantage of and enhance their stay? Well, this graph I'm going to show you right here is what we like to call the guest engagement maturity model, or the continuum, if you like to say. And you can see there's 4 different levels of guest engagement. 1 being transactional, 2 being more simple business rule approach, 3 being segmented, and 4 being the immersive experience. And the higher the level of engagement, the higher the opportunities are for revenue. And we'll break this down a little bit more. Transactional, we'll start there. This is very simple. A good example of this is just basically paying for a good and getting a service. So if you think of a dad driving down the highway, it's getting late, needs to stay at a hotel, pulls into a Motel 6, pays, the cost, stays the night, and then they're done. Will never probably come back, has no sort of engagement with that hotel. They just simply pay for an item. That's transactional. That's the lowest level of engagement. Second, you're probably familiar with too, is called a simple business rule. This is going to be something that encompasses a larger group, but is segmented a little bit slightly. A perfect example of this is going to be like a loyalty offer. So maybe you have a loyalty program on your properties or a loyalty program that you work with, and you offer everyone in that loyalty group some sort of offer. Now, it does segment it a little bit, but there still is not a level of really engagement at that point. The third one is kind of a one-size-fits-all one. This is a little bit more segmented, and this is using historical data, putting guests into a certain group type or a group behavior pattern, and offering guests engaging the guests that way. So essentially, it's a perfect example of this is kind of what we do at Nor1. We use historical data. We find guests that fit a certain profile, and we create offers based on that. You've also seen, I'm sure you've seen this in other facets of your life as well, but this is a lot more personalized, and so you can see a higher level of revenue from a segmentation offer. Lastly, the experience immersion. Now, this is like cream of the crop sort of engagement, and this is something that you would see like at Disney. Disney has, if you're at one of their properties with the wristbands, they can track who you are at that point. So they can put you in these categories, but also know who you are as an individual. Another good example of this, we think of the movie Pretty Woman, and you remember the concierge at the hotel just knowing every single thing about Richard Gere's character. That's also an immersive experience, being able to offer personalized offers at that point in time, where that guest is at that moment. So that could be, a good example of that also would be like, if you have a guest that stays with you all the time, that they hit the bar right after work. So at 4:45, you're sending them 2-for-1 offers for the restaurant and the bar at that point, knowing who they are at that point. That's an experience immersion, and that's where the guest is mostly engaged at where they are at that time. So thinking about this model, think about where your property is and some of the offers that you do in business and where they are in this to see if you can move up the maturity model. Now, it's impossible for somebody to do all of that by themselves. I think that if you say that I'm going to hire a dedicated person to do all of that personalization myself, that's fine. Unfortunately, we don't have that opportunity. In fact, a lot of properties that I speak to now are operating on limited staff. Perhaps the general manager is working at the front desk or the revenue manager. So having help with that guest engagement is going to be really helpful. So one of the things that we suggest, obviously, is using artificial intelligence or technology of any sense to really help engage that guest. What artificial intelligence specifically can do for guest engagement is predictive selling. What that means is taking a look at what the guest is willing to pay, what the guest might be interested in, and then understanding what sort of guest is willing to buy. So are they willing to not only, like if we look back at our example of the Martinez family, we can probably predict what they'd want, but we don't understand if they're willing to buy. AI can tell us that information as well. Personalization, that's the key. And you've probably seen this too from Amazon does a really good job of this. Something that's going to be tailored to you. I always find it interesting. I think I have a 1-year-old daughter at home, and I bought something on Amazon a while ago and put some information about her in. And now I get all these offers for, hey, now what is a 13-month-old like? What is a 14-month-old like? And I just think it's very interesting. Obviously, that's something I'm probably going to buy because it fits me personally. Technology can help do that as well. What else it can do also is look at your real-time inventory. So looking at not only what the guests might pay for, but also what the hotel has to offer. What are some of those offers that would match that guest? Learning and also enhancing the interaction. These are all things that technology can help with, and it's something that as hoteliers we shouldn't be afraid of. I know a lot of hoteliers are kind of afraid to try new technology. I'm telling you, it can really change your life. A part of that too is going to be automation. So going back to the limited staff, automation can really help connect those dots and presenting the offers to the guest, personalizing, and also making all of the interactions done with integration. So a lot of technology can integrate with hotel technology as well, the stuff that you already have, and make that automation process. So now let's put everything that we learned back into our guest, Lily. So remember, we didn't know anything about Lily. We're looking at her, I can't really tell too much. She looks like a happy traveler, I guess. Now, if we incorporate technology into this AI program. Now, this AI program is what NOR1 uses, so obviously I know a lot about it. It's an algorithm now that's going to take information from a guest reservation, so we can take certain data points. It's going to create a profile for her. So what kind of guest is she? By looking at her, I can't tell, but using the data, I might be able to say, well, she's here for a conference. And then matching that with what the hotel has to offer. So what is the inventory that the hotel or any sort of organization has to give to this profile? And something that most technology might have, at least what we have specifically, is over 15 years of historical transactions. So now I'm using all of this data, and now I'm going to create something targeted. So now, when I go back looking at our offers, using the data, it tells me, okay, that she's probably going to want a spa treatment, and she's probably going to want an in-room movie. So I've learned all that. I know that she's willing to pay for it, and now I've just received an extra $150 from this guest. And this is all through the engagement process, from her booking all the way through using the analytics and matching her to what is going to make her stay even more great. So kind of closing up on this, how can hotels take advantage of everything we just talked about? Well, again, realizing that with lower occupancies, properties are going to have more opportunities to upgrade. If you're at 50%, 60% occupancy, that means you probably do have a lot more room to move guests into higher room categories, and not necessarily for free. And then, of course, travel costs are down. Guests that have not been affected by the pandemic, that have the same level of income, that means they had the same amount of money to travel they did last year, and now the costs are down. So now, of course, they're going to enhance their stay, something that's going to make it a little bit more memorable. The other thing too, we're preaching a lot of social distancing, right? So bigger guest rooms are going to be definitely something that people are going to gravitate more to. They're going to feel safer if I have a bigger room, bigger space. So they're going to be sensitive to that, and even locations such as like away from an elevator, a corner room, things like that. These are all enhancements. If your property doesn't necessarily have a lot of room to upgrade, these are things that you can also do to enhance the guest stay. And one thing that I tell properties all the time is to think in that realm. What are some other opportunities for upgrading that you might have? That could be parking, early arrival, late checkouts, anything like that, corner room. Find ways that your property could get additional revenue that way. Using the technology portion, you can actually really enhance the guest experience that way, with less guest occupancy, less opportunity to make their stays memorable. So let's make sure that we do it as best we can. And with that, I just want to say thank you so much again for having me. Here's my contact information. Should you guys have more questions or want to possibly talk more specifically about your hotels, we could definitely have a conversation at any time. Give me a call, shoot me an email. I'm here for that. So with that, I just want to say thanks again to Stephen, and I'm going to stop right there.
Right, thank you.
And turn it back over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Yeah, I think the biggest point of the presentation is to emphasize that travel is still happening, and that the willingness to upgrade is still there. It's one thing that was, I'm not sure if I was surprised by it or not when I heard that statistic that folks are still willing to upsell, because it seemed to make sense. They were spending less on travel. Obviously, they still have the means to travel because they're doing it. They feel safe traveling because they're doing it, and so. I mean, it's up for hotels to take advantage of that. It's not, and that's not even the right term to. I mean, what's the right term you guys use? Customize the experience for good memories of the stay, and that's kind of what that's the point of this. We're not really trying to yeah, we are making more money off the guests, but it's not that we're trying to nickel and dime them. We're giving them what they are willing to pay for. And so, with that, I'm looking at the trends that you showed, and right now business travel is the biggest one that's been hit. The people that are traveling are leisure travelers, and they are with their families. As business travel starts to pick back up, hopefully over the next quarter, how do you think that'll change the landscape of the upsell market?
Yeah, well, I think that's a good question. Typically with business travel, we see more in the loyalty side, right? So, for example, obviously, if you love Radisson, which I do, when you're staying at a Radisson hotel, you're gonna expect certain upgrades, right? And I think with business travel and when I hear this a lot from properties is that, well, we have to upgrade these guests because they stay all the time and things like that. That's true. But the thing to consider too is that even with loyalty guests, even with people that come all the time, especially with business travel, there's still room to upgrade. There's still ways to enhance their stay. And with business travel, you're probably going to see a lot more in-room dining, specifically things to do in-room. Workspace is going to be a big portion of that too. So there's still opportunity to upgrade with business travel and without necessarily giving it away for free. Having those tools help you out too to determine, okay, what does a business traveler like is important. Because I think the thing too, and I didn't really get into this too much, but if your front desk, let's say, is doing the upgrading at your hotel, they definitely maybe aren't too keen or apt on knowing what a guest might want, right? So technology can also help with that, can help them know what to offer the guest, especially a business traveler, and not necessarily have to do all the work themselves.
Right. Yeah. Technology is something that we're learning to use more and more with this, I think. And again, just like with if any revenue management software, I mean, it's not taking the place of that user. It's assisting them, and we still have to put the right offers in the machine. We still have to have the right data, and we still have to present the offer. So, it's just there to help and to guide revenue managers out there and front desk managers and whoever's making the offer on to how to maximize it the best. So so what else has changed since COVID started? You were talking about in-room movies and things like larger rooms and workspace. What else have you seen that's changed that hotels are getting creative with?
Yeah, good question. It's funny because I get this question all the time. Like, what are people doing? It's funny. We just looked through some of the data points yesterday through eStandby, which is our pre-arrival solution. Early check-in is way up. And I think a part of that has to do with people driving mostly to destinations, possibly arriving quicker than they thought, or just not wanting to be that Martinez family and sitting around the lobby for 4 hours. So we've seen a big increase in early check-in. Now, some of the really good things that I would suggest to hotels, especially pandemic time, is any sort of in-room dining you can do. So a lot of guests or a lot of hotels actually are trying to figure out, okay, how can we do food and beverage when we have all these restrictions? We can't do breakfast, things like that. Well, you can still do in-room dining, and it doesn't necessarily have to be anything super fancy. You can do upgrades that include that. You can also do upgrades that include drinks in the room, which has been pretty popular as well. And then any sort of attribute to a room that makes it sound safe. So what I mean by that is like a corner room, high floor, things like that. Those are what hotels are doing now to sort of make the guests feel more at ease. Also, additional rooms and additional nights. Sorry, that's the other thing. With so many people doing leisure travel and kind of spur of the moment, there's a lot of properties that are doing really good additional nights as an upgrade. So you could offer a guest, hey, you're here for 3 nights, stay an extra night for $60. And, guests might, I'm driving, yeah, let's do it, and that's a way to get additional revenue that you would have gotten before.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think that's another good point. Just get creative with it, and using technology is a great way to test things. If you put an offer out there and nobody buys it, then that's something you learn. There's not a demand for that, but you don't know a lot of times you don't know until you ask someone if that's something that they would like. And they're not going to come up there and tell you, I would really pay more if you gave me 2 drinks in my room. They
Right.
would, they would probably pay for it if you ask them, but they're not going to come to the front desk and say, I will pay you $20 if you give me 2 drinks in my room. So it's all about
That's right.
being a little bit more forward and understanding what they want, and rejection is not all bad, because that's one thing you learned about that guest, is that they don't value that certain thing that you offered them. And so it's something to learn. So, either way you want to look at this is just being creative and being engaged with the guest. Either way, I think what you've found at NOR1 is that, either way, the guest appreciates the personalization and the engagement, even if they don't care to have a drink in their room or have a high floor. They do feel a better sense of belonging and with the hotel, that, this hotel does, care about my stay, that they are offering me something better, even though it doesn't really fit my needs right now. And so I think that, so either way, you're still getting a good stay from the guest, or a good experience, I think, in most part. I've never worked a front desk a day in my life, so I'm not really sure how it works, but but I can imagine as a guest, I appreciate when the hotel takes the time to ask me what I would like, or it gives me something to think about an amenity that I didn't know they had. So so good. All right.
That's exactly right.
Does anyone else on the call, we have a few people on the phone here, have a question for Dan or for me? Usually it's kind of silent. Okay.
That's just because it was just so wellly presented, everybody's like, oh, I get it.
Yeah, no, good.
That's
yeah, of course.
That's what I take from silence.
Yeah. Of course. All right. Well, with that, thank you, Dan, for coming again and talking with us. We appreciate hearing from you, and always good information. This is well up-to-date information that's, hopefully it's learnings for some of us that work in the hotel every day, that are wanting to get more creative and drive revenue before it starts to come back. It's coming back now, but we're hoping for something bigger in 21 to get us back in the swing of things. So thank you for the great information. As far as HSMAI Minnesota goes, we'll be doing one more webinar this year, maybe 2, but 1 for sure next month. And also watch LinkedIn, Facebook, and our website for some more updates about upcoming opportunities to volunteer, other events that are coming up, and please like and share our web pages as we continue to be a good resource for you for our Minnesota hospitality professionals. Again, thanks everyone. Thank you, Dan, and we'll talk next month.